Hi, I'm going to talk a little bit about the type of language that we use when we're working with young children and the reasons why. So, first of all, I just want to think about language in general and communication. Um, when we think about using the DIR model and we're thinking about a child's developmental capacities and their processing abilities, I want to think about the importance of using total communication when communicating with a child, which means not just your words, but your affect, your visual gestures, your nonverbals that you're giving, your affect cues, which means or ooh, those types of things are affect cues to help convey meaning. And so when we work with a lot of different types of children with individual differences, we notice that everyone has a different processing speed and different processing styles. And some children really have a hard time with processing and getting it all synced together. So when we think about using language with kids, the language that we're looking at is like language at the developmental level of the child. So if we're working with a very young child, we're not talking in all these full sentences. We're using a lot of affect cues, we're using a lot of visual gestures, and we're giving a lot of nonverbal kind of communication with our eyes, with our face. We're noticing what the child is noticing. We're using very simple language based on what the child is touching and using. And then as we move up, when children are a little bit more verbal, then we can match their capacities as well with more language. But I think what's really important to think about is when we're working with children that may have some underlying anxiety or some decreased processing speed, how important it is to be clear and concise and slow in our communication, and really make sure that the child is processing and making meaning of us. So oftentimes that means that we're dual coding our communication with our, visual signals that we're giving as we're speaking. Okay, so not just the words, but the whole body. And when a classic example of this is when I'm telling a child to go get three things, I'm using my fingers to say, I need you to get, a piece of tape, a marker, and a piece of paper. And within that directive, I'm telling you, with my words, but I'm using visuals to support that. And then I used a very slow pace, right? The speed. And so that kind of communication is definitely helpful when we're working with young children. Varying our affect, which there was another little video about varying our affect and why we use that, how important that is. Because when we change our affect and we change our tone of voice within our communication, we're helping the child to orient and to respond and learn to modulate their tone of voice as well. If we're whispering, or we're getting really loud, or we're getting really fast and excited, or we're slowing it down, because all of those things can help with regulation. But we want to think about matching the child's language to their play level and their play level to their language level, and staying there. And we want to avoid too much language, and we want to avoid sarcasm, and we want to invite connected language with our body and reading cues. And we find that is just right, if a child can be processing just right. So here's just a thought of, what do you do when a child seems like they have good language abilities because they're echolalic and they're speaking a lot and they're repeating lots of different sounds. Maybe they're repeating different phrases throughout the day. What does that mean with their language abilities? Well, in that way, if a child is frequently repeating, I look at it as their language being used as a way to regulate, because maybe there's some increased anxiety. And so when they say and ask the same questions, what that means behind it is, I'm really unsure of the answer you just gave me. I need more information. This isn't enough to satiate me. I need to keep asking. And so if I see a child that's using language to regulate or, to calm their anxiety, I may say, oh, yeah, you just asked me that question. What do you think the answer is? Or, I notice you keep asking me that. I wonder if you're worried about what's going to happen when you get home. He keeps asking, well, I'm going somewhere when I get home. I'm going somewhere when I get home. So I would say to recognize that children can use their language to regulate, and then try to think about what's going on in that child's profile that might be causing that. And then if you have questions about it, check in with the therapist or the parents to help understand what that phrase means. Because some children will repeat certain phrases because that's what they do at a certain time of the day. That's part of their routine. That's what this means. And it's kind of a substitute for like meaning something else. So investigate that together and figure that out. But you recognize that, a child can appear pretty verbose and have a lot of strong language, expressive language abilities, but sometimes their processing of the language and their receptive language skills are not at the same level, and vice versa. You could be a great receptive language person and have a really hard time with your expressive. And so you want to think about that when you're thinking about language. Hopefully that's helpful. All right.